I saw this clip on a show called The Usual Suspects, and no, it is not the Bryan Singer movie, but you wouldn't be remiss to make such assumptions given the topics that Candace was just talking about and the proclivities of Bryan Singer. He made a movie called The Usual Suspects in 1996. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the podcast is like a spin-off of the PBD podcast. It's got Vinny. It's got some other people. They're talking conspiracy theories. I thought I'd tune in. What are they talking about? The British Empire and drugs and opium. And I was like, well, what's their sources? And then I heard what they're using. And we've talked about these sources here on the show. I want to show you an example of like, they're offering this, but they could be purveying this. Like there's a better quality piece of information that backs up the angle that you're trying to get people educated on, but pointing them to like a specious primary source that has a lot of questioning to it, not a lot of evidence, and a lot of claims without a lot of evidence isn't necessarily the best step. So I'm just saying we could do better. And let's start with where we're at, and then we'll discuss a little bit how to improve it. And that is the dark truth about the wealth of the British Empire. So take what you're about to hear with a grain of salt. We'll try to do like the corrective actions after this clip. All right. Thank you, LD. Let that roll.
I briefed you guys on this a little bit before, so like how drugs actually work and how the sale of drugs actually works. But Rob is the only one that has the innocence of not knowing anything about the drug world, to my understanding. So, yeah. So Rob,
that's right.
What's your understanding of the drug world, Rob? How does the illegal drug trade work? To your understanding, just off optics?
To be honest, my only knowledge when it comes to any type of drugs would be any that involve THC.
But like, where do the big ones come from, though? Do you think, like, just based off the movies we see? What we hear in the media.
Well, Mexico is where they always tell you that drug smuggling is coming through, and you see the tunnels that they're using, or at the time used in the 90s to smuggle cannabis into the country, but now it looks like they use those same tunnels or new tunnels for fentanyl.
Yeah, so that's correct. But what if I told you that in reality, the cartels and the gangs and the mafias, those are all just the front men, the pawns for the richest people in the world who have been the biggest drug dealers for the last 400 years? Would that,
by the way, you don't think he'd believe it? No, of course he'd believe it. I believe it.
Why?
So Brandon, so the cartels and everybody, the mafias, whoever's into not mafias, apparently. Well, I mean, they probably dabbled in it, but all the cartels, so the higher ups are doing it. So how are they doing it to get the money in their pockets and not get arrested is basically the question.
Yeah, so there's a lot here. I got all this information from a former MI6 officer named John Coleman, who wrote a whole book on this, The Committee of 300. Like I said, I'm talking about that in my Secret Society book group. But so the way that they do it is there's this banking system set up called the chip system. It's the clearinghouse for these type of payments. And the largest banks in the world, a lot of them like Credit Suisse, American Express, they all have a program that can clean drug money and launder it. And it turns out that the DEA is kind of just like a facade. They only catch like the little, drug dealers that are not really part of this big establishment program. But so, like, to put this into context, the British East India Company, actually, we could play a clip right here from this documentary that hit on this a little bit.
The documentary?
And what Pirates of the Caribbean.
This is Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yeah, and it references what's going on.
All right, let's see this.
The East India Trading Company has need of your services. We wish for you to act as our agent in a business transaction with our mutual friend, Captain Sparrow.
So the reason I show this is because
I want to watch.
Thanks. So yeah, so the reason that I bring this up is because the British East India Company, they were making in the ballpark of $150 billion a year selling drugs in the 1800s.
What? Wait.
That's not adjusted for inflation.
Wait. Say the money again.
$150 billion a year
in the
1800s. Yes.
And what would it be adjusted to inflation right now? In the trillions?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
And that's why this guy Coleman says that the people that are actually the richest people in the world are trillionaires, because they've been like running drugs for the last 400 years. And so the British East India Company is not around anymore, but he claims that the descendants of this company are the richest people in the world that are part of this big committee of 300. So this chart shows opium imports into China from 1650 through 1880. So they were able to import opium into China. They got 10% of the entire Chinese population addicted to opium. So that's like 40 million people. Yeah.
And what
Now-
way? Like, you don't care about their health, you don't care about shit, and they're addicted. We talked about this earlier, bro. Have you ever been around a drug dealer?
Yeah.
Like, have you ever hung out about Rob, like a real cocaine or like I'm not talking about weed.
No, because I think those are different levels than I ever dealt with.
Yeah, but
like I was like with a guy named Doo-Doo, and like he had a snake, and then he'd tell me about his like graphic novel collection, which is just comic books, turns out. But
By the
that's
way-
like the guy who I'd go to.
By the way, I want to clip that, and somebody better make a photo AI of who this guy Doo-Doo would look like.
Oh no, there's mugshots of Doo-Doo.
Oh,
so
really?
we could just go to
I'm imagining
Pinellas
Delhi.
County Sheriff's Office and find him.
When I went to school, I didn't have a car. My boy Tito will.
Tito and Doo-Doo.
I'm sorry. I didn't know he was a drug dealer
Yeah.
until one time we were going back home because we live close to each other, and he makes a drop. He opens up the glove box, 2 bricks of cocaine, a gun, and I just sat there and shut the fuck up. That's what you do. That's
Yeah,
what
you don't talk.
Yeah, you don't talk.
Yeah, but-
we never talked about
Ever,
it.
yeah, but-
I kept on getting rights. We never talked about it.
So okay, so Rob,
Nice
the point,
guy, though.
There's a point, Connor, and you ever know like an actual like a drug dealer actively like he sells. He has bags on him. He has like 8 balls. He has any.
My dad was a cop, and I went to a private Christian school.
Okay, so
What do you think?
yeah. So your dad was around. But the
People used
point-
to get kicked out of my school for having a joint.
So, Brady, the point I'm trying to make is I hung out, I was around these type of people, and I'm telling you right now, the level of just transactions, people, girls, it was nonstop. He had to tell people, like I heard him on the phone, like, stop showing up to my house at 4 o'clock in the morning. Like, it was LA. It was just, so imagine if they get you hooked on that level, bro, on countries and all that stuff. It's freaking astronomical.
Think about how desirable that is from the standpoint of somebody who doesn't care about, like morals or ethics in terms of it being a business. So, typically in a business, you have to have the best product. You have to give great service. You have to sell the idea of your item. You have to pitch people on it. But, all that goes out the window in drugs. In drugs, it's the perfect product. You grow it out of the ground. People get addicted to it. It has incredibly high margins. And so, like you said, you don't have to do any work to try to get people to buy stuff from you. They're fervently coming to you.
Yeah,
to
Brady,
get
you're
it.
not promoting it. There's no commercials. There's no ad space.
Yeah.
You're just, hey, it's good. It's if like you make me think of Breaking Bad. If it's good, if it's blue, what the hell is it called?
Blue meth.
Blue meth. It's you know what I mean. They're never gonna stop.
And think about the attitudes of drug consumers that would have been going on back in like the 1800s. There were no drug enforcement agencies. There were no international restrictions on drugs. Like the reason they were so successful at selling opium is because it was just a recreational substance. You used to relax with like a pour a glass of brandy and light up the opium pipe.
But you know what? There's deeper political repercussions to this. People argue because China doesn't plan like the West. They plan in like 1,000 years, 100 years.
Of course.
Revenge.
And they're plotting revenge. Like they say the opioid crisis here, that I allegedly most of the precursors and some of the fentanyl is made in China, and they're using the Mexican cartels to push it here as revenge of what the Western world did to them.
Yeah.
And think about where so many of those drugs are coming from. China has the market cornered on synthetic drugs. There used to be things like, bath salts and flocka and stuff like that. A lot of that was chemical runoff coming from China that was then passed to Mexico for the cartels to distribute across the border. Now it's fentanyl, same thing, where a lot of the fentanyl offshoots are coming from China. But the OG drugs, opium, heroin, stuff like that, that's Afghanistan. And think about what's gone on in
Speaking of Afghanistan, look at this next chart. So it turned, not that one, the one that shows the two, the one that shows Afghan. Yeah, there we go. So there's the Golden Crescent and the Golden Triangle. Oh yeah, so there's the Golden Crescent and the Golden.
Brandon's like this.
What? I do it a lot. I do it a lot.
Like walking away. So there's the Golden Crescent and the Golden Triangle. These are the two primary places in the world where drugs like opium and heroin come from.
Wow.
And I'm sure it's just a coincidence that the Golden Triangle is where we spent 20 years in Vietnam, and then the Golden Crescent is where the British Empire spent a bunch of years trying to conquer Afghanistan. That the Russia tried to conquer Afghanistan. The U.S. spent 20 years in Afghanistan. I wonder why. Was it because 90% of the heroin in the world comes from Afghanistan? Maybe.
Wow, is that weird?
What's interesting about that is that, okay, let's look at both of those wars, right? According to Ian Carroll, who was on with us on Tuesday or Wednesday, we discussed the George H.W. Bush's ties to opium, to heroin, a money laundering scheme, and them selling heroin to soldiers in Vietnam.
And billions of dollars.
And then you fast forward 30 years or 20 years to the invasion of Afghanistan, and who is president of Afghanistan while we invade? His son, George W. Bush. Wow. So both sons' involvement, at least questionable involvement, in the heroin trades in two of the prime, what did you call them? The major...
Like the place where 90% of heroin comes from.
Yeah, it's like
what else were we doing there? What's the justification for being there? Al-Qaeda?
Yeah, guys in caves. Like, come on, bro.
But it wasn't even it. Where did they end up finding Osama bin Laden?
We're there because if you have a first Anglo-Afghan war and you have a second Anglo-Afghan war, then you probably have to have a third Anglo-Afghan war. And that's what it was from 2001 to 2020. It's just America was the front piece on it, the tip of the spear, as Alex would say. That's interesting. That's good. It's like a sixth grade explanation of the situation. And there's better resources to use on that. So let's go up a couple levels. I'm going to press this button here. And if you were to go to this page, it starts out over here. So you click forward until you get to the underground history of America. You would see a detailed discussion about the East India Company's influence on America and the world, but particularly the wealth transfer. And this is what it's all about. That's what communism technically is, developed and released in the 20th century. In the 1800s, this is a form of wealth redistribution that America got sucked into, but we don't have to be part of it. But we're going to be part of it until we learn our way out of it. You can find the underground history of America and many other great items over here on grandtheftworld.com. And now I got to do this segue. So I'm going to take a sip because I got a soliloquy coming up. All right. So Lawrence, as you know, for the past 3 weeks of August, I've been a very busy guy. I was working on the new Autonomy primer course. I was studying up for a project I had to film with the venerable Mr. James Corbett. We had lots of things going on. We had a faucet leak and it had some mold, and they ended up tearing out the kitchen. And then when they tore out the kitchen, they found asbestos under the floors. So we've had a lot of hectic things going on at home the past month or so, and I was looking forward to getting on vacation. And we got on vacation, and it's a 3-day trip to Florida, and we made it the first night on the road, and we got to a nice hotel. We got up the next day, and we drove the second leg of the trip, and we stopped to see a buddy of mine, a buddy who used to work for Mike Lynch, and we had very interesting conversations about that situation. And he lives on a beach resort type of area, and so we got to have Bloody Marys in the afternoon and have some lunch. And my son and my wife got to go in the ocean because we visited some people that he knew, and they were setting up for a party, and there was all this amazing energy. And I was like, no, I got to get back on the road. I have to get my podcast on Sunday night. I got to be in my parents' place so I could set up my studio. I don't want to get there later than Saturday night, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And then I'll have a full day to set up my studio here and make sure we can have a podcast tonight. Well, we left my buddy's place around 4 o'clock. We had a 6-hour drive. I was on plan, and we rolled into a rest stop on 95 South, right into Georgia. They have a welcome station, and we hit a rest stop, and we stopped, and we used the bathroom, and it came back to the car, and I saw a lot of fluid coming out from underneath my family vehicle. And I felt very vulnerable because I was like, what is that? It's not AC. It's not water. It's not clear. And turns out the coolant in our vehicle is a reddish color. So it wasn't immediately oh, that's antifreeze. So anyway, I popped the hood like you're supposed to do. You take a look at the situation. I evaluated the situation, and it wasn't good. And if it was a busted hose, I could see like, oh, I'll get a hose and put a new hose on and we'll keep going to Florida. We have a vehicle packed full of stuff. We're coming down to see family. And now we have been severely interrupted with this unscheduled meeting, as I call it. So I got my complexity triggered. I was outside of my comfort zone. All of a sudden I had to deal with solving a problem and it was beyond my capacity. So here's what I diagnosed. I looked at the system, it's a coolant system in a car. I'm familiar with that. I squeezed the hoses. Okay. Oh, there's fluid shooting out of the water pump. Okay. So water pumps go bad. They have a seal. It starts dripping. It starts weeping. It's a weeping seal. It's a mechanical part. It's driven by the belt. And so I figured I'll just put more liquid in the tank and I'll keep topping it off with liquid and we'll make it the next 250 miles of the trip to my parents' place. So now I go and find a container and I start putting water in the containment unit where you get the overflow, and it just starts coming out and drip. I can hear it running out. As soon as I pour it in, it comes out under the car. And usually that's a blown hose or something like that. So I went back over and I wiggled the pulley on the water pump. I'm like, no, the water pump pulley is definitely not supposed to wiggle like this. And that's where the liquid is shooting out from. And it's not a slow drip that I can manage with some patience and consistency and stopping and topping it off. This is the car's bleeding out. Like, you can't run a V8 without a cooling system. And so at that point, the vehicle's incapacitated. It's like 95 degrees. It's getting late in the afternoon, so the sun's still hot, but it's not completely dark yet. And I have to deal with some problems that I had not calculated on. And I ended up going through the full spectrum of emotions yesterday. I started out calm, cool, collected, and I said, I'm just going to call AAA because I have been the Automobile Association of America. AAA is an auto club for those of you who live outside of America. It's something that Americans pay for, and it's like an insurance in case you get a flat tire or you need your battery jumped. You can call the auto service and they'll come hook you up. I've been a customer of AAA for 35 years. I carry top level coverage, usually Premier RV. So I have a 200-mile towing radius because that's money well spent usually. However, this is Labor Day weekend in America. And when I called AAA, they didn't help us. They stranded us. And the first thing before they could even strand us was you get on the phone, you get to the system, it's automated system. You can't get to a human being, and it makes you sign into like an app on the phone, which is not what you want to do when you're standing in a auto situation out in traffic someplace and there's people driving by and there's loud noise and there's a highway. And you might not have your reading glasses on, as I did not. And it was difficult. I could not get the app to register with my membership number, which, by the way, is 16 digits. And you have to enter in the spaces or whatever. So anyway, that system was not working. I was not happy with AAA at that point. So my wife gets on the phone, starts calling them and says, gets through their system because she's good at navigating. She got the human being. I kept saying, human being, human being. It would not give me a human being. She asked in a better way. She got a human being. And that human being said, we can help you. Maybe. It's going to be $7 per mile. It was like 250 miles to get to where we had to go. I wasn't just going to leave my car and all my stuff and all my studio equipment in some strange garage halfway to Florida and be there for a week. So I was willing to pay their extortion amount. I told them so much, like, this is extortion, but what choice do I have? So I'm signing up for $2,000 in towing, and it's going to go to probably the Cadillac garage that they're going to drop it off in the middle of the night, and then I'll get an $800 bill to change the water pump. So I figure at that point, I should download the Uber app, get an Uber for my family, send them to go get a rental car, come back and pick me up, and maybe the tow truck will be there, or AAA will help us out. That's when, in that process, getting the Uber, which I have not done. I haven't ordered an Uber since like 2015. But I'm pretty sure the last time I ordered an Uber, I ended up with a Porsche convertible. So I was keen. I was like, what's going to happen this time when I download Uber? Well, this time I needed to have an Uber big enough to have some luggage in there because I got stuff and I don't want it to just be in the tow truck and get stolen. So I chose an Uber driver. Her name was Esther. like the book of Esther. I was like, Esther has 6,000 trips. She has impeccable customer service. I'm going to trust my family with this unknown driver. And I ordered it, and it took, half hour for Esther to get to the place we're at, because we're at a rest stop and you have to like go up the highway, turn around, come back down. So finally Esther gets there, and I have to evaluate her character. Am I going to trust this woman and her vehicle to my family to go to the airport and hopefully get a rental car and come back, and hopefully I'm still safe at the rest stop? Because it was getting dark and it was getting a little sketchy there, and there was no security, and it's a thing. So anyway, I'm a big boy. I could take care of myself. I was fine. Esther did a wonderful job, but she did this thing and it gave me pause. She got to Enterprise Rental Car and she calls me through the system and says, your wife and son have gone in to get the car. I'm going to turn the Uber app off now so you don't get charged. Now, I had already tipped Esther $20 up front just so I had her attention and focus on this situation so that we could get like a good resolution. But at that point, I was like, I would love to just trust you, Esther, and just turn off the app. But I want proof of life for my family first. So I called my wife, made sure she's all right. Then I said, Esther, go ahead, disconnect the app. I'll call you back on your phone. We had a nice conversation. We talked until it all got hooked up. And then I gave her 5-star rating. I tipped her another $20 today on the app. So that all worked out well. I'm glad that our trust in human beings being kind to each other and not being predatory like worked out, because I felt very vulnerable in that situation. Like my wife and son just went off with a stranger in a car that I ordered from an app. I hope it works out. Like I don't really, there's not much I could do. So now let's focus on the mechanical thing. I'm trying to get towed out of there. I figure AAA, is going to call me back and say, we got a tow truck on the way. They did not. They did call at one point and said, you're in the queue for a tow truck. And they said you could, you could get a call at 1 or 2 in the morning. So we're at a rest stop. It's not going to be safe to stay with the family at the rest stop. So then I called and booked a hotel room. So now we have a rental car. We're going to go to a hotel room. I'm going to drive the truck with no water pump for 3 miles because it's cooled off. I'm going to drive it to the hotel, and then I'm going to have AAA scoop it up out of that parking lot when they call to tow the truck, as they're supposed to in that situation where you pay for 35 years to get that courteous, service. So in the midst of all that anxiety, stress, unknown, how am I going to solve this problem? We got to the hotel room. We got in some air conditioning. My wife went and got some ice or something. And I said to my son, wonder what it takes to change a water pump. It's from a 2018 Cadillac Escalade. And so we start looking it up. And I was really encouraged because the first video was like, it's easy. And I was like, cool, I'll take you up on that offer. Show me. And I was incredulous. So I watched another video and it looked way more difficult and very intimidating and not something I could do in a hotel parking lot. So then I watched another video and I was like, oh, it's encouraging again. So then I went out to the truck and I lifted the hood. I'm like, what parts do I have and what are they doing? And the complicated one was changing the thermostat with the water pump. But I think my water pump was just the thing that went bad, so I can get that part. So then I started calculating. So now I'm working on a solution. I'm no longer in the overwhelm, the what is going on? How am I going to solve this? This is going to ruin vacation. It's all sorts of inconvenience, because those are going to be overwhelming until you cut through it with, I'm thankful we didn't have an accident. I'm thankful it happened here and we noticed it and it didn't like happen where the engine was totally overheated and we had to pull off in the middle of really nowhere. At least we're at a rest stop. So once I started counting my blessings and being grateful for that situation, even though it's an imperfect situation, I started working it into what I call the best case of a worst case scenario. Like this shit happened, but we don't have to have the worst case where it's $2,500 to tow it, $800 to change it. You lose the car for a week. People steal stuff along the way out of it, right? You can whittle that back down to what's the best case scenario. Best case scenario is I can get a screwdriver, a 10 millimeter socket, a 1/2-inch breaker bar, and I can get the part and change it. And I can do that in a parking lot without leaking coolant all over the hotel parking lot, because they frown on you lifting your hood and doing auto work at the hotel. So I made sure I parked by a dumpster And this morning, my wife got up. Well, she got up before I did because I got to bed late last night. And she said these words, and I'm like waking up. And she gave me she's like, pop quiz. What tools do you need? I'm going to the auto parts store. So I was like, screwdriver and, the breaker bar and the 10 millimeter socket, ratchet set, whatever. And she got the right parts, thankfully, because the guy who was working at the auto parts store, it's his first day. And this kid didn't know a flathead regular screwdriver from a Phillips screwdriver. So we're really lucky that the parts we got were the right parts. Because when I looked at the box, I said, this is the wrong part. It's not even the right picture. It did have the right part inside. It did have the right gasket. And with that, it was all on me. Can I stand in the blazing sun, bent over into my truck? Can I get these 6 bolts out? Can I remove the part? Can I put the gasket on properly, line it up without cross-threading anything? And can I do this on the first time? Because I don't think I have the capacity in the sun to do this like a second time. So my wife comes out while I'm doing the operation on the truck at one point, and she's like trying to hold an umbrella over me. And I'm like, no, what I need is a piece of duct tape for the ratchet extension so I can turn it by hand and make sure I'm not cross-threading this stuff. And thankfully, being prepared, I always have some duct tape in all the cars. So we went and got some duct tape off a Bic lighter, and I put that on the ratchet extension, and I was able to get it in there. And once I started figuring it out, it all went easier than I thought. So yesterday, when I estimated I need to have it towed, I have to depend on AAA. I'm helpless because I can't replace a water pump. And that's a true thing for most of history, because you have to remove the fan shroud. You have to have your pulley pulling device to stop the pulley so you can crank the nut. Like, it's a whole operation to do it. There's usually 2 or 3 or 4 hoses that are coming off of that. They all have fluid in them. So it's not normally a thing you could just do in a parking lot. I happen to have looked it up, and the universe blessed me with saying, you happen to own one where it's easy. And it's like a first time in history. And if I hadn't asked the question, I couldn't have gotten to that answer. If I had stayed assuming that it's the worst case scenario and I can't do anything, that probably would not have been a good week. But now, I'm telling you this, by the way, not to complain. I'm bragging right now that I overcame challenges in the last 24 hours that I did not think 24 hours ago I could overcome, let alone get it done. I mean, the truck ran flawlessly. The temperature and the thermostat did not move a tick the whole time. I didn't have to add any water. There was no drips. So yeah, that's me getting my complexity triggered when I thought I was going to have a nice, easy 3-day. I had done the due diligence. I took the truck to my mechanic last week. I said, I'm driving it to Florida, go over the whole truck, replace whatever needs to be replaced so I don't have to go do what I just did for the past 24 hours. But you don't ever know when a water pump's going to go on your car. And those things happen. And when they do, you can learn how to try to make the best of them. But if you don't learn how to do that, it's not going to happen naturally. You'll panic, you'll argue, you'll fight. People get divorced in those situations. They do stupid stuff. Learn how to keep your cool and learn how to think it through. And that's kind of the example I wanted to share with you. Now, I mentioned that for the past 3 or 4 weeks, I've been working on these projects. One of the projects I worked on was the new Autonomy primer course, which replaces what used to be called the obstacle course. And it's a way of proving to yourself that you can show up for yourself and get value from this type of curriculum. I want to share with you the first 4 minutes or so. It's like the elevator pitch for the entire primer course. So it's not edited yet, but I did film it and multicam it. There's just no B-roll. So I've aligned sound with picture and all that good stuff. So what you're going to see is part of I spent a good 20 hours editing that course last week. And I made a course about how to edit 6 cameras and 7 pieces of audio all together like this. So maybe that'll be a bonus for the primer course. We'll have to see. LD, can you roll the first piece of that footage? And we'll cut it off after the first part, 4 minutes in.
As far back as we can see in human history, for all individuals, education has and is foundational to living a meaningful and satisfying life because it liberates us from superstitions of unreality, and it allows us to plan our future based on reality. The ability to plan and self-educate is essential to human survival, and unlike animals, we lack the ability to survive without accurate planning for our future. Now, there was a time when schooling delivered individuals a chance to strive for independence, abundance, and a lifestyle of liberty. In today's fast-changing world, traditional schooling no longer prepares individuals for the rigors and challenges of responsible adulthood. Successful individuals have always known the value of self-education in the direction of our goals, to map our dreams to reality through decisions and commitments, goals and tangible actions which deliver the desired result. The system is crushing people because they can't effectively monetize their existing skills, nor can they readily, easily, and continuously learn new, higher value skills, more utility to the market they can provide, if Yoda were to say it. The massive potential of the internet era has ignited an ever-evolving opportunity to outgrow our challenges and problems and flourish in a snag-free lifestyle. Instead, people have been passively sitting by as over $1 trillion is invested into the artificial intelligence market, never thinking for themselves to embolden their own natural intelligence and pattern recognition skills. It's time to scale up or be overwhelmed with the forthcoming technocratic deluge, which will drown most who haven't leveled up their skills beyond their schooling and indoctrination. I've said for many years, your brain is a quantum computer between your ears. It can provide you with all the answers you need if you program it properly and feed it quality data, but we've been indoctrinated. That equals garbage in equals garbage out. Your brain is meant to serve you. We have to clean up the data. The ability to observe and qualify data as knowledge is a faculty almost lost in our world today, but it's available for those who seek intellectual self-defense skills and excel in life. Now, seizing the opportunity to direct your own learning expedites your skills and elevates your earning potential in the marketplace. Excusing ourselves away from our rights, our needs, and our potential development are no longer doing our best for ourselves. So, what could you imagine would happen for yourself if you reprioritized only 10% of your time per week as a means to acquire the knowledge, understanding, skills, experience, and network to close the gaps on your goals? Maybe you've tried to elevate your game by taking online courses or watching YouTube. Those depend a lot on your self-discipline and your method of learning your way through to make it work for you. In other words, most courses suck by design, and they're not created with an architecture to support the weight of the knowledge transfer that you need to close those gaps. I've created a learning system that can actually help. It doesn't suck. In fact, it's a world-class offering, uniquely packaged so that each and every student and participant can achieve growth on their own schedule consistently as they overcome their obstacles. What follows is a new way of handling the age-old problem of self-education to survive and thrive in the world. It's your chance to outgrow your status quo, to gain new skills, to elevate your perspective on opportunity, to meet people along the way who help you achieve the goals beyond your present capabilities. Autonomy is unlike any other educational offering on the planet. It's an incubator for growth, an accelerator for creating relationships, creating and establishing long-term relationships. It's an elevator of understanding and a generator for creating plans, expediting and solving life's problems and challenges, and overcoming the obstacles blocking your path. Doing so on a consistent basis with a calm, cool, collected atmosphere. It all happens here. And with nearly 1,000 graduates, I know what I teach works. I know you have the ability to learn it. I know it can work for you as well or better than it has for me. When I acquired these skills for myself, it was a struggle because I had never invested that much in my own self-education. However, I would never have earned a 200-fold return on my investment in the first 5 years of applying these skills in the marketplace. That was a game changer for me. This is truly $1 million education, and everything I teach is what I've used for my own growth and success over the past 3 decades. Sharing the opportunity to do so is likewise a game changer for those who are willing to know and willing to learn and show up for themselves in the game of life. And with all that being said, I invite you to engage in finding out for yourself in the Autonomy Primer course. I'll see you on the other side.
This is the other side. I wanted to show you, in case you were interested in any of that, it's getautonomy.info. You can learn all about the offering. You want to take the rest of that course, you'd have to click one of the yellow buttons on the page and find out for yourself. The course, by the way, the primer course that is an introduction for, it just provides you transparency, insight, expectation setting, and dispels doubts about what the offer is so that you can make an informed decision on your own time. So it says in the course, you're never asked to like take your credit card out and pay for the things while you're talking to the graduates. Like that's not in the process. There's nothing cringeworthy or pushing or persuading in that process. It's an invitation for people who need it now, who want to grow, who need help. It's there. Otherwise, we'll get back to the show. We got lots of stuff to do tonight.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come